What would you do if the very people who were supposed to love you most left you alone on the day you needed them most? I collapsed at work, doctors called my parents, and they never came. But that wasn't the end of the story. That was the beginning of a truth I had buried for years. A truth about family betrayal and the fight to finally choose myself. My name is Emily Carter, and I am 29 years old. If someone asked me to describe myself 6 months ago, I would have said driven, ambitious, reliable. I worked as a marketing strategist at one of New York's top media agencies, Blackwell and Partners. I lived in a small but stylish apartment in Brooklyn that I decorated with thrift store finds, string lights, and canvases I painted on sleepless nights. I was the type of person who always had a plan, who never missed a deadline, who smiled through fatigue because I believed I needed people to see me as strong. I had spent most of my life trying to prove myself not just to the world, but to my family. In their eyes, I was always the second best daughter, the one who could never quite reach the shine of my sister Melissa. That hunger for validation became the gasoline that fueled my career. On paper, I was thriving. In reality, I was slowly unraveling. And I didn't even notice until that Tuesday morning, the day everything cracked open. The day started the way most of my workdays did, a 6:00 a.m. alarm, black coffee that tasted like burnt bitterness, and an email inbox that felt like a Hydra delete 1-3 more appear. I ironed my navy blazer and white blouse, my presentation armor, while the news hummed in the background. The anchor's cheerful voice reported Wall Street numbers, but my attention was on the dull throb behind my left eye. I had been having headaches for months. Nothing earth-shattering, just a low nagging pain that whispered in the background of my life. I blamed stress screen time, too much caffeine, too little sleep. That morning, I popped 2 ibuprofen, telling myself I'd deal with it later. At 8:45 a.m., I was in the conference room with my laptop open reviewing my slides for the North Star campaign pitch. This was a high-stakes account, millions of dollars in potential revenue. I had prepared for weeks, late nights, skipped meals, meticulous rehearsals in front of my bathroom mirror. Colleagues trickled in, chatting in low voices. My manager, Richard, gave me a thumbs up. "You've got this, Emily," he whispered. His confidence should have reassured me, but my stomach twisted tighter. At exactly 10 hours, the North Star executives filed in. Crisp suits, polished shoes, sharp eyes that weighed me like I was another line item in their budget. Richard introduced me with his smooth, practiced charm, then handed me the floor. I stood at the head of the table, remote in hand. Slide 1 appeared on the massive screen behind me, projected numbers, colorful graphs, every detail perfectly aligned. "Good morning, everyone," I began, voice steady. "Today, I'll walk you through our vision for expanding North Star's digital reach in the next quarter." For the first few minutes, everything flowed. My words felt rehearsed, yet alive, the way they had in my late-night practices. I gestured confidently, made eye contact, clicked seamlessly through slides. People nodded, some scribbled notes. I felt the adrenaline kicking in, this was my zone. But then midway through explaining consumer behavior metrics, something shifted. The letters on the screen blurred as if the projector lens had fogged over. A sharp, excruciating pain shot through my skull, so sudden it stole my breath. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat a violent drum. I blinked rapidly, willing the dizziness to pass. My throat tightened. "Here you'll see." My voice faltered, words tangled on my tongue. A flicker of panic rose inside me. "Not now. Please, not now." I gripped the edge of the podium for stability, trying to ground myself. My vision tunneled the edges of the room, darkening. The faces around the table swam like distorted reflections in water. Emily Richards' voice sliced through the haze. "Are you okay?" I tried to answer, but the words disintegrated. My knees buckled. Papers scattered from my hands. And then the world went black. Beeping. A low, rhythmic beep that tethered me back to consciousness. I opened my eyes to the blinding fluorescence of a hospital room. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nose. Tubes and wires connected me to machines that monitored the fact that I was still alive. For a moment, I didn't know where I was or why. Then fragments of memory slammed into me, the conference room, the blurred vision, the collapse. Shame flushed through me before fear took over. A doctor appeared at my bedside, a woman in her 40s with kind but serious eyes, clipboard in hand. "Miss Carter," she said softly, "you collapsed at work. You're stable now, but we need to run additional tests." Her words floated around me, muffled by the single question thundering in my mind. "Where is my family?" Almost as if reading my thoughts, the doctor continued. "We contacted your emergency contacts. Your parents. They said they would come, but—" Her voice trailed off, her eyes flicking away. I stared at her, waiting for the rest of the sentence. It never came. The silence said enough. They weren't here. They weren't coming. Lying there, hooked up to machines, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Confusion, anger, hurt, but mostly a deep, bone-aching loneliness. For most of my life, I had told myself that if things ever got truly bad, my parents would show up. Sure, they compared me to Melissa endlessly. Sure, they dismissed my achievements as good, but not Princeton level. Sure, they had missed birthdays and milestones. But in a crisis, surely then, they would be there. Yet here I was in a hospital bed, my body betraying me, and the people who should have been my anchor had vanished. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. No missed calls, no texts, no voicemails. Just silence. I closed my eyes, and memories flickered like an old film reel. My 16th birthday, when they left me with a grocery store cake while they drove 6 hours to Melissa's sorority event. My high school graduation dinner, where conversation revolved entirely around Melissa's engagement, while my acceptance to Northwestern was brushed aside. The Thanksgiving, where my childhood bedroom was repurposed into a playroom for Melissa's children, as if my existence was an afterthought. Each memory pressed down on me like a stone, building a mountain of neglect that suddenly felt impossible to climb out from under. So this is it, I thought. This is the proof I tried so hard to deny. I could collapse, I could almost die, and still they wouldn't come. I was never their priority. Maybe I never will be. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. I didn't want to cry, not for them. But the truth was undeniable. Their absence hurt more than the IV needle in my arm, more than the dull ache in my head. Just when the weight of despair threatened to suffocate me, the door creaked open. Olivia, my colleague, my friend, slipped into the room. She looked out of place in her pencil skirt and heels, her laptop bag still slung over her shoulder, as if she had sprinted straight from the office. "Emily," she breathed, rushing to my side. "You scared the hell out of us. How are you feeling?" Her presence cracked something open in me. Relief? Gratitude? A reminder that even when family fails, sometimes strangers or friends step in to become family? That night, as machines beeped and Olivia dozed in the chair beside me, I stared at the ceiling tiles and realized this collapse was not just physical. It was emotional. A collapse of illusions, of the fragile hope that my parents' love would one day feel unconditional. It was also a beginning, the painful start of redefining what family really meant. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Olivia had finally gone home to grab some rest, leaving me with my thoughts. My body was heavy, My eyelids tired, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Lying there, I stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of something I had been avoiding for years, the truth about my family. When the doctor told me my parents had been called but never showed up, it was like a trigger. A box deep inside me, the one I had kept locked for so long, suddenly cracked open, and with it came a flood of memories I thought I had buried. I let them rise one by one, even though each memory cut me like glass. When people looked at the Carters, they saw perfection. My father, Robert Carter, was a respected architect with his own small firm. He wore tailored suits every day, even on Sundays, and carried himself with an air of dignity. My mother, Linda, was an elementary school teacher, adored by students and parents alike. She had the kind of smile that lit up a room, though I often wondered why that light never seemed to reach me. And then there was Melissa, 3 years older, endlessly accomplished. My sister was the golden child, the kind of girl you'd expect to see on a college brochure cover. Flawless blonde hair, perfect grades, a natural leader. She could walk into any room and command attention, and my parents adored her for it. On Christmas cards, we looked like the quintessential American family, a neat colonial house with a white picket fence, coordinated sweaters, everyone smiling. But beneath that polished veneer lay a truth no photograph could capture. I was invisible. I was maybe 7 or 8 the first time I realized I was the lesser one. I had spent days working on a science fair project, building a model of the solar system with styrofoam balls I painted myself. When I presented it at school, my teacher praised my effort. I rushed home bubbling with pride, eager to show my parents. My father barely glanced at it before turning to Melissa's project, a water filtration system that looked like it belonged in a college lab. "Look at your sister's work," he said with pride. "First place again. Emily, you should try to apply yourself like Melissa does." I remember standing there holding my little solar system, feeling the glow of pride extinguish in an instant. It wasn't that I was failing. In fact, I was a strong student. A solid 3.8 GPA in high school, part of the debate team, and a regular volunteer at the animal shelter. But none of it mattered when Melissa was standing beside me with her 4.0 GPA student body presidency, an early acceptance letter to Princeton. "Emily just needs to try harder," my mother would say during parent-teacher conferences sometimes while I was sitting right there. Her sister never had these problems. Their voices became the soundtrack of my childhood. "Why can't you be more like Melissa? Why can't you work harder? Why can't you just be better?" My 16th birthday is one of the sharpest memories in that box. It should have been a milestone. Sweet 16, a day to feel celebrated. Instead, it became proof that in my family, I was an afterthought. Melissa's college sorority was hosting a formal that same weekend. My parents packed up the car and drove 6 hours to help her prepare hair, makeup, dress photos. They left me at home with a store-bought cake from the local grocery store and a note, "We'll celebrate next weekend. Love, Mom and Dad." I remember lighting the candles myself, staring at the flickering flames in the quiet kitchen. I closed my eyes and made a wish not for presents or parties, but simply for them to show up. They never did. The promised celebration never happened. I ate that cake alone, and I learned something that night: hope is a dangerous thing in the Carter household. By the time high school graduation arrived, I had stopped expecting much. My parents showed up, of course, camera-ready smiles plastered on their faces as I walked across the stage. But even that day, Melissa managed to eclipse me. At the dinner afterward, every conversation revolved around her recent engagement to Travis, a medical student from a wealthy family. My acceptance to Northwestern University in Chicago was mentioned only once. "It's so far away," my mother said with a frown. "At least it's a good school," my father added, though his tone made it clear it wasn't Princeton. I sat there picking at my food, feeling like a guest at my own celebration. That night, I packed my acceptance letter into a box with trembling hands. It wasn't just a college decision. It was my escape plan. Years later, when I came home for Thanksgiving, I discovered that my childhood bedroom had been converted into a playroom for Melissa's kids. They hadn't even told me. The posters I'd hung as a teenager, the bookshelf filled with my favorite novels, the photo albums gone. Replaced with toy chests, tiny beds, and crayon drawings taped to the wall. "You don't mind, do you?" my mother said casually when she saw my expression. "It's not like you're here often." I slept on a pull-out sofa in the basement that night, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter upstairs as Melissa's family occupied the guest rooms. During dinner the next day, Melissa dominated the conversation with stories about her children's accomplishments and Travis's promotion. When I tried to share news about my own promotion to senior strategist, my father checked his watch and asked if anyone wanted more turkey. I left a day early, claiming I had a work emergency. No one questioned it. No one even called to make sure I got back to Chicago safely. A few weeks later, Melissa tagged me in a family photo captioned, "Family Complete." My absence wasn't just unnoticed, it was celebrated. Lying in the hospital bed now, I could see it clearly. Each of these moments wasn't isolated. They were lessons silent, but brutal. Your voice doesn't matter. Your achievements are small compared to hers. Your presence is optional. I learned to be invisible long before my body collapsed in that conference room. The adult in me wanted to brush it off to say I didn't care. But the child inside me, the girl with the solar system project, the one who blew out birthday candles alone, she was still there. And she was still aching. She wanted to scream, "Why wasn't I enough? Why couldn't you see me?" But there was no one to scream at. Only the sterile walls of a hospital room and the echo of absence. And yet, in some strange way, that neglect shaped me. It made me work harder. It made me push myself further. It made me chase success as if my life depended on it. Because in a way it did. Recognition, validation, worth, they weren't gifts handed to me. They were mountains I had to climb alone. But the higher I climbed, the more hollow it felt. Because what good is success when the people you want to impress the most aren't even watching? That's what led me here, a marketing strategist with million-dollar accounts, a neat apartment in Brooklyn, a carefully curated life, and an emptiness that no promotion or paycheck could fill. As the memories faded, I lay there in the hospital bed, tears rolling silently down my cheeks. The beeping of the machines was steady, almost comforting. For the first time, I admitted to myself the collapse wasn't just about my health. It was about the years of emotional weight I had carried. And maybe it was time to stop carrying it. When the acceptance letter from Northwestern arrived, I remember holding it in my trembling hands as though it were a key one that could unlock the door to a different life. I stood in the kitchen that afternoon, Melissa chattering about some award she had won, my parents beaming with pride. No one noticed the letter in my hand. No one asked. I slipped it into a folder and carried it upstairs like contraband. That night, I sat on my bed and whispered to myself, "This is it, Emily. Your chance, your way out." But even as excitement flickered, guilt crept in. Was I running toward my future or away from my family? Did it matter? I knew one thing: staying in Boston meant suffocating. The summer before I left, I spent weeks quietly packing. Each item carried a memory, some tender, some bitter. The debate club trophy that no one came to watch me earn. The sketchbook filled with art my father once dismissed as hobby work. The faded sweatshirt from freshman year that I wore when Melissa's friends teased me for being the awkward sister. I folded them carefully, but in truth, I wasn't just packing clothes and books. I was packing pieces of myself, fragments of a girl who longed to be seen. At night, I lay awake and wondered, Would I ever come back? Did I want to? The evening before I left for Chicago, the house was filled with chatter, but not about me. Melissa was home, and every word from my parents revolved around her wedding plans. The flowers, the guest list, the dress. I sat at the table, invisible as usual. My plane ticket burned in my pocket, a reminder that in less than 24 hours, I would be gone. Emily, my mother, finally said halfway through dessert, "Are you sure you want to go so far away? Chicago is... well, it's not Boston." Her tone wasn't concern. It was disappointment wrapped in maternal pretense. I forced a smile. "Yes, Mom, I'm sure." My father cleared his throat. "It's a good school, not Princeton, but good." And that was that. No congratulations, no pride. Just a subtle reminder of where I fell on the family ladder. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow, not from fear of leaving, but from grief that leaving felt so easy. The first time I stepped off the plane in Chicago, the air felt different, thicker, sharper, alive with possibility. The city was loud, chaotic, unapologetic. I loved it instantly. The cab ride to campus was a blur of skyscrapers honking horns and strangers rushing by with determination in their stride. No one knew me here. No one cared who my sister was or what my parents thought of me. For the first time, anonymity felt like freedom. When I unlocked the door to my dorm room, I exhaled as though I had been holding my breath for years. The space was small, with beige walls and squeaky furniture, but to me, it was sacred. This was mine. That first night, I stood in front of the cracked dorm mirror and made myself 3 promises. 1. I will not compare myself to Melissa. 2. I will create my own definition of success. 3. I will learn to love myself even if no one else does. I repeated them like mantras, clutching the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white. It felt dramatic, maybe even childish. But in that moment, I needed ritual. I needed to mark the beginning of a new chapter. Yet freedom didn't erase the ache. During those first months, loneliness shadowed me. Walking across campus, I would see clusters of parents visiting their kids, dropping off care packages, taking them out to dinner. I pretended not to care, but inside, I envied them. Phone calls home were brief and perfunctory. My mother asked if I was eating enough, then shifted the conversation back to Melissa's engagement. My father mentioned the weather. They never asked about my classes, my friends, my dreams. Every call ended the same way, me staring at the silent phone, wondering if I should stop dialing altogether. Thanksgiving break came, and I debated whether to fly home. Part of me longed to see familiar streets, to smell Mom's pumpkin pie, to feel like I still belonged. But another part of me dreaded the inevitable, the comparisons, the invisibility, the subtle but sharp sting of being reminded that I was secondary. I bought a ticket anyway. Hope, it seemed, was harder to kill than I thought. When I walked through the front door, the first thing I noticed was the absence of my posters in my old room. The space had already begun to transform into something else, as though my existence there was temporary at best. I told myself it didn't matter. But lying awake on the pull-out couch in the basement, I felt the familiar heaviness press down on me again. Dinner that night was textbook Carter family. Melissa talked, my parents listened, and I disappeared into the wallpaper. "I just can't believe how lucky I am," Melissa gushed, describing her fiancé's new residency. "He's going to be a surgeon. Can you imagine?" "You deserve it, honey," my mother said, glowing with pride. I cleared my throat. "I got promoted to assistant strategist this week." My father glanced at his watch. "Anyone want more turkey?" And just like that, my accomplishment evaporated. The next morning, I packed early and told them I had an urgent project in Chicago. No one protested. No one stopped me. On the train back to the airport, I stared out the window and thought, maybe they don't even notice when I leave. Maybe they prefer it that way. Back in Chicago, I threw myself into school. I studied harder than ever, driven not just by ambition, but by defiance. If my family wouldn't see me, the world would. I joined clubs, built a network, found friends who valued me not for being Melissa's sister, but for being Emily. It wasn't easy. The shadow of my family still lingered, but slowly, I felt myself emerging like sunlight breaking through clouds. Freedom, I learned, is complicated. On one hand, it was exhilarating to define myself without constant comparison. On the other, it was terrifying. For the first time, I had no template, no voice telling me what I should be. I was free to succeed or fail on my own terms. And sometimes, late at night, that freedom felt like isolation. I would sit by the window, watching the city lights blur, and wonder if I disappeared, would anyone back home even notice? There were nights I wrote letters to my parents, pages filled with words I couldn't bring myself to say. Dear Mom and Dad, do you even see me? Do you know that I'm trying, that I'm fighting every day to be enough? I never mailed them. Instead, I folded them neatly and tucked them into a shoebox under my bed. That shoebox became my secret archive of pain, a tangible reminder of everything I wished they would understand. One evening, after a grueling exam, I returned to my dorm to find a care package waiting at the front desk. My heart leapt foolishly, hoping it was from home. It wasn't. It was from Olivia, a friend I had just begun to grow close to. Inside were snacks, a handwritten note, and a silly drawing of us laughing in class. I sat on my bed, holding that note, and realized something profound. Family doesn't have to be blood. Family is anyone who shows up. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt the possibility of healing. Looking back, leaving Boston was more than a geographic move. It was a spiritual one. It was the act of choosing myself over their neglect. But the journey wasn't clean or easy. It was messy, painful, filled with moments of longing and doubt. And yet in that mess, I began to stitch together something new, a self that wasn't defined by their absence, but by my resilience. As I lay in the hospital years later replaying these memories, I realized that every step away from Boston had been both an escape and an act of courage. I hadn't just left home. I had begun to build one inside myself. Chicago became my proving ground. After Northwestern, I dove straight into the city's marketing scene. It was competitive, ruthless, and electric, the kind of place where people measured your worth by your portfolio and your stamina. I thrived. I started as an assistant strategist, but within 5 years, I was managing accounts worth millions. My apartment in Wicker Park was small, but filled with life-abstract paintings by local artists, a record player spinning vinyl on Sunday mornings, a bookshelf stacked with everything from Steinbeck to self-help. Friends often teased me that I had created a sanctuary disguised as a shoebox. Professionally, I was admired. Colleagues respected me. Clients trusted me. On LinkedIn, my profile sparkled with endorsements. To the outside world, I was a picture of independence and success. And yet, whenever the holidays rolled around, I felt a gnawing emptiness. 2 years into my job at Horizon Media, I decided to go home for Thanksgiving. I told myself it was tradition, obligation, maybe even hope. Maybe this year would be different. When I walked through the front door, the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air. But the house itself felt different. I went upstairs to find my old room and froze. The walls were no longer pale lavender, but splashed with bright yellow paint. My bookshelf had been replaced with plastic bins of toys. Crayon drawings taped sloppily where my posters once hung. A small bed with cartoon sheets sat where mine had been. It was now a playroom. My chest tightened. That room had been my refuge, where I wrote in journals painted late at night and dreamed of leaving Boston. Now it was as though I had never existed there. My mother appeared behind me, holding a tray of cookies. "Oh, Emily, you don't mind, do you? We thought it made more sense for the kids. You're hardly here anyway." Her words sliced me clean. That night, I slept on a pull-out couch in the basement. The springs dug into my back, but what hurt more was knowing my presence had been erased. The next evening, the family gathered around the long oak table. Melissa, glowing in a cashmere sweater, held court with her stories. "Tyler won first place at his science fair," she bragged. "And Sophie just started piano lessons? She's already a natural." My mother clapped her hands together, eyes bright. "Oh, Melissa, they're just like you at that age." My father nodded approvingly. "You must be so proud." I cleared my throat, forcing a smile. "Actually, I was promoted to senior strategist this month. I'll be managing the North Star account. It's a huge opportunity." Silence. My father glanced at his watch. "Does anyone want more turkey?" The conversation shifted instantly back to Melissa's children, as though my words had dissolved into smoke. I sat there, my fork-frozen heat creeping up my neck. Once again, I was the invisible daughter, the footnote. The next morning, I packed quietly, dragging my suitcase to the door before anyone had finished breakfast. "I have to get back," I said casually. "Big project at work." No one argued. No one asked if I needed a ride. On the train back to the airport, I stared at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me wore a tailored coat and confident makeup, yet her eyes were heavy with a familiar ache. How was it possible that I could lead multi-million-dollar campaigns in Chicago, but couldn't get my parents to acknowledge a single accomplishment? Back in Chicago, I buried myself in work. Late nights at the office, endless cups of coffee, strategy sessions that stretched past midnight. Clients praised my ideas. Executives complimented my leadership. My LinkedIn inbox buzzed with recruiters. But every success felt hollow, because the people I most wanted to impress, the people who should have celebrated me, first remained indifferent. I started asking myself dangerous questions. What is the point of winning in the world if you keep losing at home? One evening, I sat in a wine bar with Olivia. The place was dimly lit, candles flickering on the tables. She sipped her Merlot and studied me. "You look exhausted," she said. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then told her about Thanksgiving, the playroom, the dinner table, the dismissal. Olivia listened quietly, her brow furrowed. "Emily, that's brutal. But you know what? Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up." I laughed bitterly. "That sounds nice, but it doesn't erase the fact that they never see me." "Maybe you don't need them to," she said gently. "Maybe you need to see yourself." Her words lingered long after the wine glasses were empty. That winter, insomnia gripped me. I lay awake, replaying conversations in my head, rewriting them as if I could force my parents to hear me. "Look, Dad, I'm successful too. Mom, I've built a life worth being proud of. Why can't you see it?" But in every scenario, they still turned away, still shifted the spotlight back to Melissa. I began to realize I wasn't just chasing success for me. I was chasing it for them, trying to earn a love that should have been unconditional. Spring came, and with it, another holiday invitation. Easter at home. I stared at the email, my stomach twisting. For years I had returned out of duty, out of hope, out of desperation. But this time, I asked myself, why? What was I gaining? What was I sacrificing? The truth hit me hard. Every visit left me emptier. Every visit reinforced that I was the outsider. So I deleted the email. Instead, I spent Easter brunch with friends in Chicago. We crowded into my tiny apartment, eating waffles and laughing until our sides hurt. It was imperfect, chaotic, but for the first time, I felt something close to belonging. Lying awake that night, I thought about the paradox of my life. To the world, I was thriving, an independent woman with a career, friends, and a future. But to my family, I was still the invisible daughter, the runner-up. And I wondered, maybe failure at home wasn't my fault. Maybe it wasn't mine to fix. That realization didn't heal me overnight. The ache remained, but it planted a seed, a recognition that I couldn't keep pouring myself into a well that would never be filled. The world had begun to see me. Chicago had begun to see me. My friends had begun to see me. Now the question was, would I allow myself to see me too? It began quietly. At first, the headaches came only in whispers, slight throbs behind my temples after long days at the office. I brushed them off. Too much screen time, not enough water, another cup of coffee will fix it. But weeks turned into months, and the whispers grew louder. The throbs sharpened, piercing through concentration. Ibuprofen became my silent companion, rattling in my purse like a guilty secret. And yet, I never slowed down. That's the thing about being conditioned to prove yourself. You keep running, even when your body begs you to stop. Then came the nights. I would collapse into bed exhausted, but my mind refused to surrender. My body buzzed with restless energy, as if wired to an invisible current. I stared at the ceiling for hours, counting cracks in the plaster, listening to the city hum through my thin apartment walls. Sometimes I would pace the floor at 3 a.m., clutching my head, whispering to myself, "Just sleep, Emily. Please, just sleep." But sleep never came easily, and in the quiet hours, my thoughts turned cruel. Maybe the headaches are punishment. Maybe your body is reminding you of everything you've carried too long. Maybe you're breaking because you were never strong enough in the first place. At work, I masked it well, or so I thought. Rough night colleagues would ask when they saw the dark circles under my eyes. Just deadlines, I'd say, with a quick smile, holding my coffee like a shield. But no amount of caffeine could disguise the fatigue that settled into my bones. I forgot small details, lost focus in meetings, snapped at coworkers for minor mistakes. The Emily they admired, the strategist with boundless energy, was fraying at the edges. And I hated that anyone might notice. When Richard assigned me to lead the North Star pitch, I knew it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Winning this account could elevate my career to the next level. So I ignored the warning signs. I buried the pain under preparation, late nights, rehearsing slides, perfecting charts, memorizing transitions. "This is your moment," I whispered to myself in the mirror. "Don't let anything ruin it." But even as I practiced, dizziness crept in. Sometimes I'd stand too quickly and the world tilted. Sometimes the letters on my laptop blurred into meaningless shapes. I told myself it was stress. I told myself I could push through. After all, hadn't I been pushing through my whole life? That Tuesday morning, I woke with a splitting headache. It felt like someone was pressing a hot iron against my skull. I considered calling in sick. For a fleeting moment, I imagined emailing Richard. "Can someone else handle it today?" But the thought vanished almost instantly. People like me don't cancel. We show up no matter the cost. I ironed my blazer, drank bitter coffee, and forced myself out the door. The subway ride blurred past. By the time I reached the office, my hands trembled. Still, I clicked through my slides one last time, repeating my script like a prayer. At 10 a.m., the North Star executives filed in all crisp suits and sharp stares. Richard introduced me, and I began. For the first few minutes, adrenaline carried me. My voice was steady, my gestures confident. I saw heads nodding, pens scribbling, but then the letters on the screen swam. My vision tunneled. "Here you'll see," my words faltered. A sudden searing pain exploded in my skull. The room spun violently. I gripped the podium, fighting for breath. My throat constricted, my knees buckled. Emily Richards' voice was distant, muffled. Papers slipped from my hands, faces blurred into watercolor smears. And then nothing. Darkness swallowed me whole. I woke to beeping, sterile lights, tubes and monitors surrounding me. For a moment, confusion blanketed me. Where was I? What had happened? Then memory struck the conference room, the blur, the collapse. Shame burned hotter than the IV in my arm. A doctor appeared at my side. She was calm, composed, clipboard in hand. You collapsed at work, she explained gently. We ran some preliminary tests. You're stable now, but we need to investigate further. Her words floated around me, but my mind fixated on one thing: my family. Almost as if she could hear my thoughts, she added, We contacted your parents. They said they would come, but... She trailed off, eyes flicking away. But they didn't. The silence screamed louder than any words. I stared at the ceiling, blinking back tears. I had always believed, hoped that in a real emergency, they would show up. No matter the comparisons, the neglect, the favoritism, when it truly mattered, surely they'd be there. But here I was, alone in a hospital bed. Machines monitored my heartbeat, but no one from my family cared enough to witness it. My phone on the bedside table was silent. No missed calls. No messages. No apologies. The weight of their absence pressed against my chest, heavier than the illness itself. As I lay there, memories surged like an unstoppable tide. The 16th birthday spent with a store-bought cake. The graduation dinner overshadowed by Melissa's engagement. The Thanksgiving night on a pull-out couch invisible while they laughed upstairs. Each memory layered over the next, suffocating me. It wasn't just one collapse. It was years of small collapses finally converging into this moment. Maybe this is who I am, I thought. The forgotten daughter. The one who can fall, break, bleed, and they won't notice. The thought was unbearable, but undeniable. Tears slid down my temples, soaking into the hospital pillow. For once, I didn't stop them. The door creaked open, and Olivia slipped inside. She looked out of place in her work clothes, her laptop bag still slung over her shoulder. But her eyes were full of concern. "Emily," she whispered, rushing to my side. "You scared us to death. How are you feeling?" Her voice cracked something inside me. Relief. Gratitude. In that moment, I realized sometimes the people who save you aren't the ones you share blood with. Sometimes they're the ones who simply show up. That night, as Olivia dozed in the visitor's chair, I stared at the ceiling tiles. The collapse wasn't just physical. It was the culmination of years of emotional weight, years of trying to prove myself to people who would never see me. And maybe it was also the beginning. Because once something breaks, you can't pretend it's whole. You can only decide what to build from the pieces. In the hospital, time lost its shape. There were no days or nights, only the rhythm of machines, the steady beeping of the heart monitor, the soft hiss of the IV. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting wires. Doctors spoke in clipped tones about tests and results. I used to measure my life in deadlines, in campaign launches, in achievements that sparkled on resumes. Now my life was measured in milliliters of fluids and the intervals between painkillers. And in that stillness, I was forced to sit with myself and the silence of a family that never came. On the second day, Dr. Chen entered with a neurologist, Dr. Patel. Their expressions were heavy, and my stomach dropped before they even spoke. "Emily," Dr. Chen began, her voice steady but somber. "Your preliminary tests show abnormalities. We need to perform an MRI. There are signs of pressure inside your skull." Dr. Patel stepped forward, his tone blunt but not unkind. We suspect a tumor pressing against the membrane around your brain. We'll know more after imaging, but surgery may be necessary. The words slammed into me like a freight train. Tumor, brain, surgery. I wanted to ask questions, but my throat closed. All I could manage was a whisper. Am I going to die? Dr. Patel paused. We don't believe it's malignant, but if untreated, it could cause irreversible damage. The sooner we act, the better your outcome. I nodded numbly, though nothing felt real. When the doctors left, my eyes drifted to the empty chair beside my bed. That's where my mother should have been sitting, holding my hand. That's where my father should have been pretending not to cry, but squeezing my shoulder in reassurance. That's where Melissa should have been, even if only to snap a photo for Instagram. But the chair was empty. The only fingerprints on its armrest came from Olivia, who returned after work laptop in tow, refusing to leave me alone. And later from Jennifer, the night shift nurse, with a quick smile and a chatterbox mouth that filled the room with warmth. Blood family absent, chosen family present. The contrast burned. On the third night, Jennifer sat on the edge of my bed while checking my IV. She spoke in her usual bright tone, but there was something deeper underneath. Can I tell you something, she asked? I nodded. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I was 32. My husband left 2 weeks later. My parents were gone. My sister lived overseas. I went through chemo and radiation completely alone. Her eyes softened, or at least I thought I was alone. But the nurses, the doctors, the patients in the chairs beside me, they became my family. They carried me when I couldn't carry myself. Tears blurred my vision. How did you survive one day at a time? She said. And by letting go of the people who refused to show up. Her words sank deep, echoing louder than the machines. On the 4th day, I scrolled through my phone, desperate for a distraction. That's when I saw it, Melissa's Facebook post. A family photo, mom, dad, Melissa, her husband, her kids, all smiling at an amusement park. The caption read, "Family fun day, couldn't be happier." My chest constricted. While I lay in a hospital bed facing brain surgery, they were eating cotton candy, riding roller coasters, documenting their joy. I zoomed in on the photo, searching for guilt in their faces, but all I saw were smiles wide and careless. Family complete, Melissa had written once. I finally understood what she meant, complete without me. That night, loneliness pressed so heavily against my ribs I could barely breathe. I closed my eyes and imagined myself as a child again, holding my science fair project, waiting for a glance of approval that never came. Blowing out candles alone. Sitting in the basement while laughter floated above. Now, here I was, replaying the same story. Different stage, same role, the daughter who didn't matter. I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone against the wall, to make them feel the pain that sat like a stone in my chest. But I was too weak, too tired, too defeated. Instead, I cried quietly into my hospital pillow, my sobs muffled by the sterile air. The next morning, Olivia arrived with a bag of croissants and coffee, though I could hardly eat. She pulled a chair to my bedside, opening her laptop to catch up on emails while staying with me. You don't have to be here all the time, I told her weakly. Yes, I do, she said firmly, because you shouldn't go through this alone. Her words cracked something open. No one in my family had ever said that to me. Not once. In Olivia's presence, I felt something new, safety. By the end of the week, Dr. Patel returned with results. The tumor is operable, he explained. But we recommend surgery soon, within days. If we wait, the risks increase. I listened numb. My mind swirled with images, scalpels, bright lights, a surgeon's hands inside my skull. I wanted my parents there, even if only for one moment of comfort, But when I called, no one answered. Later, Melissa texted, "We're busy this week. Hope you're okay." Sending thoughts. Thoughts? Not presents, not love. Just words typed between amusement park rides. So I said yes to surgery with Olivia by my side and Jennifer promising she'd be there when I woke up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the machines, wondering if I'd wake up again after tomorrow. I whispered into the darkness, "If this is the end, at least let me go knowing I tried. At least let me go free from the need for their approval." Tears rolled down my temples. For once, they weren't tears of longing. They were tears of release. In those hospital days, I learned the truth I had avoided for years. My family had abandoned me long before the collapse. Their absence now was simply the final confirmation. But in that same truth, another revelation emerged. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up when you collapse. And as I looked at Olivia asleep in the chair and Jennifer humming softly during her rounds, I realized I wasn't alone after all. The morning of the surgery arrived with a silence that felt heavier than any noise. I woke before dawn, the hospital hallway dim and quiet, except for the occasional squeak of rubber soles. My hands trembled under the thin blanket. No matter how much I tried to steady my breath, it came shallow uneven, betraying the storm inside me. This was the day. The day they would cut into my skull, reach inside, and pull out the thing that had stolen my peace. The day I would either wake to a new life or not wake at all. At 6 sharp, Dr. Patel walked in. His calmness felt almost unnatural against my fear. He outlined the procedure again, the incision, the removal of a section of bone, the delicate work of separating tumor from tissue. His voice was steady, but I could hear the weight behind it. "There are risks," he reminded me. "But we're confident in the outcome. I'll be there the whole time." I nodded, unable to speak. Words felt too small against the magnitude of what was coming. Olivia arrived minutes before they wheeled me out. Her hair was pulled back hastily, eyes tired, but determined. She took my hand and squeezed. "You've got this," she whispered. "And you've got me. That's enough." I searched her face, trying to memorize it. For the first time in my life, someone's presence felt unconditional. No strings, no comparisons, just loyalty. "Don't leave," I whispered back. "I won't," she promised. Jennifer appeared at the doorway, still in her scrubs, her badge tilted sideways. "Night shift just ended, but I'll be back tonight. You'll wake up, and I'll be here." Her smile was bright, but her eyes told the truth. She knew how terrifying this was. I nodded weakly, clinging to their words as the anesthesiologist rolled me toward the operating room. The surgical suite was cold, filled with metallic smells and harsh lights. I lay on the table, heart pounding so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. The anesthesiologist leaned over me. "All right, Emily, I want you to count backwards from 10. 10, 9, 8. By 7, darkness swallowed me. They say anesthesia is dreamless, but I fell into something between dream and memory. I was a child again, standing in the kitchen with a birthday cake glowing before me. I closed my eyes, wishing for family to notice me. But when I opened them, the candles had burned out, the cake gone, and I was alone. Then the scene shifted. I stood on a stage, presenting to an audience of shadows. Every time I spoke, they turned away, faces blurring, laughter echoing. Finally, I was running through a forest, branches clawing at my arms. A voice whispered behind me, "You'll never be enough." And just as I stumbled, falling into darkness, another voice cut through. Olivia's voice. "I'm here. You're enough." When I opened my eyes, the world was hazy. A ceiling light glared above me, and muffled voices drifted in and out. My body felt heavy, unresponsive. Then a familiar sound, Olivia's voice. "Emily, can you hear me?" I blinked slowly, the edges of her face coming into focus. Relief washed over her features. "You did it," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "You made it through." Tears slipped down my temples. I was alive. The next few days blurred together. Pain was constant but dulled by medication. My head was wrapped in thick bandages, and even lifting a spoon felt like a marathon. Jennifer stopped by every night, bringing small comforts, ginger tea, silly stories about her patients' crossword puzzles. She made the sterile room feel less like a prison. Dr. Patel visited, his tone lighter this time. The tumor was benign. We removed it entirely. Prognosis is excellent. I let out a shaky laugh, though tears followed. "So, I get to live." He smiled. "Yes, Emily. You get to live." On the fourth day, my phone buzzed. A message from my father. "Heard about the surgery. Sorry we weren't there. Hope you're okay." I stared at the words, cold and hollow. That was it. No explanation. No apology worth holding. I showed Jennifer. She raised an eyebrow. "Family emergencies have interesting timing, don't they?" Her voice wasn't cruel, just knowing. For the first time, I didn't cry. I simply turned off the phone. Physical therapy began the following week. My legs wobbled like newborn deer. Each step sent sharp jolts through my skull. But I forced myself forward, gripping the walker, sweat dripping down my neck. "Slow down," the therapist urged. "No," I panted. "I've been slowing down my whole life." "Not anymore." Each step wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. Proof that I could rebuild not just my body, but my sense of self. As I healed, no one from my family appeared. Not my parents, not Melissa. No flowers, no cards, no effort. But Olivia brought fresh flowers every week. Jennifer taped drawings from her niece on my wall. Even Richard, my boss, stopped by with soup and a firm pat on the shoulder. Absence spoke louder than words, but so did presence. And I was learning which one mattered more. One evening, weeks later, Jennifer wheeled in a chair and sat beside me. "You know what this is, Emily?" she asked. "This isn't just recovery, it's rebirth. Your body forced you to stop, to let go of what was killing you inside. Not just the tumor, the need for people who never chose you." Her words struck deep. I realized she was right. The surgery hadn't just saved my brain, it had carved away something toxic in my heart. The day they removed the bandages, I looked in the mirror. My hair was uneven, a scar etched across my scalp. For a moment, I wanted to cry. I looked broken, less than whole. But then slowly, I saw something else. Strength, proof, survival. The scar wasn't ugliness, it was a crown. As I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, I whispered to myself, "You survived. You chose life. You are enough." For the first time in my life, I didn't need Melissa's shadow or my parents' approval to define me. I had walked through darkness, and I had come back. This was my rebirth. It was a week after my release when the phone rang. My body was still fragile, my steps unsteady, the scar on my head itching beneath new hair growth. It was my father. His voice was stiff, uncharacteristically strained. "Emily," he said, "your grandfather. He had a major stroke. Doctors say it's bad." The room tilted. Grandpa. The one man who had ever truly seen me? The one who had taught me to fish at Crystal Lake, who called me Katie Girl in a voice full of pride. "I need to see him," I whispered. But Dr. Patel's warning echoed. "Travel could cause complications. You're still at risk for seizures, bleeding, infection." I couldn't go. Not yet. The helplessness hollowed me out. My family hadn't shown up for me. But now, when the only family who ever mattered was slipping away, I couldn't show up for him. A nurse arranged a video call. Grandpa lay in bed, frail but alert, his voice raspy but unmistakably his. "My brave girl," he said, tears shining in his eyes. "You made it through." I nodded, though my throat burned with unshed tears. "I'm okay, Grandpa. The doctors say I'll recover." "Good," he whispered. "That's good." He coughed, then forced out the words, "The lake house, it's yours. Paper signed. Always your special place. Don't let anyone take it." I covered my mouth, sobbing. "Why me?" His eyes locked onto mine. "Because you see value where others don't, and because you've always been enough." Those words sank deeper than any wound. 2 weeks later cleared for limited travel. I boarded a train with Olivia at my side. The journey was exhausting. Each bump rattled my healing skull, each stop tested my patience. By the time we arrived, I was pale, trembling, leaning heavily on her arm. But I was determined. Boston had always felt like a cage, but this time I wasn't here for them. I was here for him. Grandpa's room smelled faintly of antiseptic and fading flowers. Machines beeped steadily, a cruel reminder of borrowed time. He reached for my hand, weak but warm. "Always proud of you, Katie girl." Tears blurred my vision. "I learned it from you." Then the door opened. My parents walked in, Melissa trailing behind. The air shifted, immediately heavy with unspoken history. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Grandpa's voice, stronger than I'd heard in years. "I've watched this family treat Emily like an afterthought." I kept my mouth shut. "But I'm dying, so to hell with politeness." Dad stiffened. "Father, shut up," Franklin Grandpa snapped. "You failed her. You all failed her." Melissa's face crumpled, shame flickering. I shouldn't have posted those things. It was cruel." "Yes," I said, my voice steady, "but it wasn't new. It was a lifetime of cruelty." I turned to them, heart hammering. Years of swallowed words rose to the surface. I don't need grand gestures or empty apologies. I need change. Real change. I need to be seen for who I am, not who you wanted me to be, not in comparison to Melissa. I need to matter without having to beg for it. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. My mother's eyes welled, but no words came. My father paced, muttering about fairness. Melissa leaned against the window, her guilt heavy, but her defenses still intact. Grandpa squeezed my hand again. "Don't let them rewrite you. You write yourself." Eventually, my father muttered, "We should have been there. I'm sorry." The words, long overdue, felt hollow. Too little, too late. My mother whispered, "Emily, you'll always be our daughter." I shook my head. Being your daughter has felt like being invisible, and I'm done with that. The truth tasted like steel on my tongue, bitter but freeing. When Grandpa drifted into sleep, I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice didn't. "I came here for him, not for you." I needed to say my truth out loud, and now I have. Melissa whispered, "What now?" "That depends," I said. "But I won't keep chasing love that isn't given freely. If you want a relationship with me, it has to start with seeing me, valuing me, not comparing me." No one replied. The silence was its own answer, so I turned Olivia beside me and walked out. Weeks later, after Grandpa passed, I stood at the edge of Crystal Lake. The cabin was mine, now his gift, his legacy. The water shimmered calm and endless. I touched the worn wooden railing and whispered, "I'll build something here. Something that's mine. Something that honors you." For the first time in my life, I felt peace. Family had failed me in every way that mattered, but Grandpa's love, Olivia's loyalty, Jennifer's kindness. They showed me that love isn't about blood. It's about choice, about showing up. I no longer defined myself by their neglect. I no longer carried the weight of their absence. The final choice wasn't about cutting ties. It was about choosing myself, choosing to build a life where I was not invisible, but radiant. And that was enough. Grandpa's funeral was simple, just the way he would have wanted. A wooden casket, a quiet service, the sound of the wind threading through the trees. I stood at the back, Olivia beside me watching as relatives I barely knew offered practiced condolences. My parents were there, too stiff and silent, their eyes darting away whenever they met mine. Melissa cried prettily, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I felt hollow, the grief raw, yet strangely clean. Grandpa had been my anchor, and now that anchor was gone. But in his absence, I felt a strange new clarity. His words echoed, "You right yourself." For the first time, I believed I could. Back in Chicago, my apartment felt smaller than ever. The walls closed and the city noise too loud. I realized I needed space, not just physical, but emotional. So I packed a bag and boarded a train north back to Crystal Lake. The lake house stood waiting, quiet and resolute, its wood weathered by decades, but still strong. Grandpa's presence lingered in every creak of the floorboards, every notch in the railing. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. For the first time in months, I exhaled without pain. The lake house became my sanctuary. I spent days sitting on the porch, watching the water shift from morning silver to evening gold. I journaled for hours, pouring out years of swallowed words, finally letting them find air. Some days, I simply sat in silence, listening to the wind through the pines. Healing, I discovered, wasn't dramatic. It was slow, almost invisible, like watching grass grow. But little by little, the ache in my chest softened. Recovery was not just about the soul, it was about the body too. Physical therapy became part of my rhythm. Each stretch, each careful walk around the lake was both painful and liberating. I relearned balance, coordination, strength. I celebrated small victories, climbing stairs without dizziness, cooking a meal without fatigue, sleeping through the night without waking in panic. Every scar ached, but every ache reminded me I survived. My parents called occasionally. The conversations were polite, clipped. My mother asked about my health in a voice that carried obligation more than love. My father offered vague updates about Melissa's kids, but something had shifted in me. I no longer begged for more. I answered briefly, set boundaries, ended calls when I needed to. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. I had spent my life trying to squeeze love from stone. Now, I simply put the stone down. Back at Horizon Media, I was greeted with cautious warmth. Richard clapped my shoulder, colleagues offered smiles. But I knew I couldn't return to the old way, burning myself out to prove I belonged. So I redefined success. I worked smarter, not longer. I turned down projects that drained me. I mentored younger employees, reminding them not to tie their worth to constant output. Ironically, my career flourished more when I stopped chasing approval. Clients respected my confidence, colleagues admired my boundaries. And for the first time, I respected myself. One evening, sitting on the porch, the idea came to me. What if the lake house wasn't just mine? What if it became a place for others like me, people broken by neglect, abandonment, betrayal, to find healing? I envisioned retreats, weekends of journaling, nature walks, bonfires by the water. A place where scars weren't hidden, but honored. It felt ambitious, maybe even foolish, but Grandpa had trusted me with this house. Maybe this was how I could honor him, by turning his gift into a sanctuary for others. Olivia became more than a friend. She became chosen family. She visited often, bringing laughter, and grounding me when I drifted into old doubts. Jennifer, too, remained in my life. On her days off, she drove up to the lake house, her chatter filling the quiet spaces. She called me warrior girl and reminded me that scars were proof of battles won. Together, they formed the family I had always craved. Not perfect, not bound by blood, but real. Melissa reached out months later. A long email full of apologies, confessions, regret. I read it slowly, heart steady. I didn't respond immediately. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a transaction. It was a process. When I finally replied, I wrote, "I don't hate you, but I can't carry the weight of repairing what you broke. If you want to try it, has to be real. No more shadows, no more cruelty." I hit send and let the outcome rest where it belonged, with her. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, I stood barefoot on the dock, the cool wood beneath my feet, the air crisp with pine. For years I had lived in the shadow of absence, defined by what I lacked. Now I felt full, not because everything was fixed, but because I finally stopped chasing what was never mine to hold. I whispered into the twilight, "I am enough," and for the first time I believed it. My life was not the one I had dreamed of as a child. It was messier, scarred, stitched together with loss, but it was mine. From the ruins of neglect I built boundaries. From the collapse I built resilience. From the loneliness I built chosen family. The lake house stood as a testament. We cannot choose where we come from, but we can choose where we go. And I chose forward.